Okay. So let me start. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're having technical problems. My pen is not working. This is not good. Okay, sorry. Let me see if there's something else. I'm going to switch to another pen. Okay, gang. Bluetooth is turned off. That may fix things. Good. Okay, I'm very sorry about the delay. My computer does strange things every now and then. So what's on the agenda for today? So the first thing we're going to do is finish off Hopfield networks. Actually, it's not even worth explaining this now. So we're going to finish Hopfield networks, and then we're going to talk about higher dimensional attractors like line attractors. I'll finish off Hopfield networks, and then I'll give a summary of what we've learned so far, which is actually a lot. None of this is easy, and we covered a lot of material. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. Remember, we're considering this model, SI of t plus 1 equals, originally we considered a sine function, SIGN, but now we're going to switch to tangent. And this is going to give us a lot more insight into what's going on. The sum on J of Jij, Sj of t. So we've already talked about under what circumstances this can store fixed points. But now I want to give you more insight into the role of signal and noise. And I think we've talked about that before, but I'll be very clear about what I mean by signal and noise shortly. So remember the Jij, it's 1 over n, sum on mu equals 1 to p. So p memories of eta I mu, eta j mu. Okay, and these etas, each of these are plus or minus 1 with probability of half. Okay, so these are binary random vectors. Okay. And when we do that, this whole term here, change colors to make things more clear. This whole term right here becomes beta sum on mu of eta I mu times 1 over n, the sum on j of eta j mu sj of t. And this we call the overlap. And the reason we call it the overlap, what it does is tells you, it tells you the extent to which Sj of t lines up with eta j mu. Okay, if Sj of t is equal to eta j mu, so if these two things are equal, so mu equals 1, so if Sj of t equals eta j mu, then mu equals 1. Okay, and if Sj of t is mainly equal to eta j mu, then mu is close to 1. So it really tells you how close we are to these memories. So we call the eta j's, sometimes I just call these the memories. Okay, and it basically, and remember, the rest of the brain has learned what these are and can interpret them. So when we do this, we can change variables. So this, by the way, should be review. We can change variables and get m new. So the sum on, the sum on j, so 1 over n. Actually, let's do this properly. So 1 over n, the sum on I of Si of t plus 1, of eta I new Si of t plus 1. This thing, remember, is just equal to m nu of t plus 1. So the overlap at time t plus 1 is equal to tanh. So beta. So I'm going to separate out the sum over mu into terms with mu equal to nu. So this sum here, with mu equal to nu, mu not equal to nu. So we have, first of all, we have eta I nu, m nu, okay, plus beta, the sum mu not equal to nu of eta I mu, m mu. And these, of course, are both evaluated at t. So it tells you if I know the overlaps at time t, I can figure out the overlaps at time t plus 1. And I forgot the most important term, which was, so this is equal to m nu of t plus 1. And then it's, of course, equal to 1 over n, the sum on I of eta I nu. Okay. So eta I nu, because eta I nu is plus or minus 1, we can bring it inside the tanh. So what we can do is basically just bring this inside to there and to there. And eta I nu squared equal to 1 because eta I nu is plus or minus 1. So this equals, so we have m nu of t plus 1 equals 1 over n, the sum on I of tanh beta m nu of t plus beta, the sum mu not equal to nu of eta I nu, eta I mu, mu of t. So this is a pretty cool expression. Okay. Basically, and well, let's actually make, what we want to do is really understand deeply what this expression means. Because this kind of expression comes up all the time. Oops. So this is our expression. And what we want to do is, so when I talk about signal to noise, so this term here, so this term here is a signal. And signal doesn't make any sense, but we'll see in a second that noise really does make sense. Okay. And the reason they're called signal to noise, let's take the case noise equals 0. So that happens, for instance, if there's only one memory, right? If basically, if P remembers the number of memories, so this sum is the P, if P equals 1, then if mu not, so basically noise equals 0, this is equivalent to Jij equals 1 over n, eta I nu eta j. So there's only one memory, okay? In this case, if mu not equal to nu, there's nothing there. So this is P equals 1. In that case, we have m nu of t plus 1 equals 1 over n, the sum on I of tanh beta m nu of t. And that, of course, equals just I equals 1 to n. And this, of course, equals tanh of beta m nu. Okay. And that gives, and if we plot the right-hand side, we just get a plot that looks like this. We talked about this last time. So that's the tanh term. And basically, we have an equilibrium when m nu of t plus 1 equals that. So we have 3 equilibria. So one here, oops. One here. These two are stable and these two are unstable. Okay, so memory can be embedded. So that's a near zero noise regime. What happens if the noise isn't 0, and what does this term look like? And that we actually, I believe, looked at last time. And so remember, these quantities here, these are just random variables. Okay, eta I nu and eta I mu, they're uncorrelated random variables, plus or minus 1. So this sum over mu, so let's go to a new page. Actually, let's do it down here. So this noise, so the noise, if we square the noise and average it, so this is something that you should know by now. It's basically, it's a sum, because the terms are independent, it's a sum mu not equal to nu of eta I nu squared, eta j nu squared, mu squared. And both of these, of course, are equal to 1. Both of these are 1. So this equals a sum on mu not equal to nu of mu squared, which we're going to write as p minus 1 mu squared. Where sort of it's implied this averages over the mu, this mu not equal to nu. Okay. So mu is not equal to nu. And remember, how big is mu, right? So mu is equal to 1 over n, the sum on j of eta j mu sj of t. So the idea is, if sj of t, if this term here is mainly lined up with eta I nu up here, if that's the case, then it won't be lined up with, it won't be lined up with eta j mu. So this term is basically, so this term here just becomes a random variable, a zero mean random variable. So basically the average value of mu squared for one particular mu is equal to 1 over n squared, the sum on j of eta j mu squared sj of t. So both eta j mu and sj, well, sj of t is at most 1. So this is sort of less than 1 over n. So the point is, point is mu is portion of 1 over root n, or mu squared is 1 over n, or less than 1 over n. So this term here is 1 over n. And what we get is a noise squared. So noise squared, when you put these together, as our usual sort of worst case scenario, p minus 1 over n. Okay. So we can think of this noise as a random variable. So let's go back to this, to our, move up a little, and we're going to write. So we're going to take this equation here. So the key observation is the noise is just a random variable, and we figured out its approximate size. Oops. So we go down here, and we can write, so we can write m nu of t plus 1 is equal to 1 over n, the sum on I equals 1 to n. Sorry, my n's sometimes look like w's. So if you see a w, there's a good chance it's an n. Of tanh of beta m nu of t plus beta times squiggle I. Actually, let's put beta. Start over. beta m nu of t plus beta the square root of p minus 1 over n squiggle I. It's sort of worst case scenario, right? This is the case where we set all the SJs to 1, so we have a less than sign, which we're kind of ignoring. So squiggle I is 0 mean. So variance unit variance, or maybe a little smaller. Okay, but we won't worry about that so much. Okay, and so what we want to know is what this does to our curve, right? So let's go back to our tangent curve. So this is what I've plotted here is this axis. I'm going to put m nu, and what I plotted is tangent of beta m nu of t. Okay, and what we want to know is what does a noise do to this curve? So what are we doing here? So we're taking basically, this is a sum over n, and for each n, we're taking the tangent, and squiggle I can be positive or negative, so it's a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller. Okay. So this term here adds or subtracts to this term beta m nu. And what does that mean? So let's look here at this point here. So let's say we're right here, okay? So this is some value of m nu. And this point here is tangent of beta m nu. When we add in the noise, that means sometimes this is positive and we add a term here, or sometimes it's negative and we add a term here. And squiggle I is just like to be positive or negative. So what that does is when we go positive, so this distance here, the positive part, so effect of positive squiggle I, okay, increase a little bit but the curve is concave. This is the effect of negative in squiggle I. Negative squiggle I. Okay, and as you can see, because this curve is concave, because it curves, downwards, the effect of negative squiggle I is bigger than the effect of positive squiggle I. So this is bigger. Oops. So this is bigger. And this is smaller. Okay. So over here, the effect of this noise, the effect of this averaging all these other random patterns is to pull this down. So net effect. So this is the net effect. Net effect. So basically what happens is after you do the averaging, this thing smooths out. Okay, so this is one of the most important take-home message you can have from this course. So these random patterns, any noise, basically all it does is smooth out our gain functions. And of course that's bad, because if you smooth it out too much, I'm not going to draw it, but if if beta or if this number is really big, okay, it ends up getting smooth like this, and then you can't embed a memory, right? Because to embed a memory, you need beta less than 1. So this is our curve. This is our M nu curve. I should draw that M nu. What you need, so now there's only a single fixed point at 0, and that's all you can do. Okay. So if you had too much noise, these gain curves get smoothed out too much, and you lose your memory. And that's really what happens. That's why these networks have finite capacity, because the noise smooths out the gain function. Okay. So that's super critical point. So the effective noise. Oops. So I'm going to write that down here. Effective noise is smooth out gain functions. Okay. So that's maybe one of the most important points you can take home from all this analysis. If you remember that, I'll be very happy. And we can even take an extreme case. Let's take an extreme case where this is the case of beta equals infinity. Pretty large. In which case that our curve goes like this, right? So this is tanh. Actually, this becomes sine. When beta goes to infinity, we just get basically sine. Of M nu. Okay, this is M nu. Okay. Now it's a little more complicated because where the beta comes in, but now we have we effectively have M nu of t plus 1 equals sine of M nu of t plus root p minus 1 over n squiggle I. Okay. And now it's sort of easy to see what's going on. If you sit right here, so if you're sitting right here, right, sometimes when squiggle is positive, nothing much happens. Okay, so this is squiggle positive. Squiggle negative, so this is squiggle less than 0. Okay, so when you add these two together, positive and negative, you get something negative. And the closer you are to this point, the more likely you are that the negative squiggles are going to make it past the 0. And so you get the same thing. You get basically, even with sine, what happens is, this smears out. And you get a picture like this. So even with a sine function, this noise tends to smear you out. Okay. So this sort of, and so let's apply this now. Let's consider, so far we've considered sort of really simple models, right? So the model we had was S, this is our model for right here. We had a really simple model for JIJ. So this doesn't look anything like a real life neural network. Now but we can let's now fix that and consider the case where we're going to consider something more realistic. And actually, I'm going to call it, I'm going to make it so realistic, I'm going to call things the firing rate of a neuron I. So the firing rate of a neuron I, nu I, actually, let's switch to black. The firing rate of neuron I, nu I, and now we're going to put all this together. Well, not quite. Well, so nu I in equilibrium is phi of sum minus the sum on j. I'll tell you why minus in a second. Wij nu j plus the sum on j of jij nu j. Okay, so the minus sign means this is an all inhibitory network. And I'm doing that only to reduce the amount of algebra I have to do. We could do this excitatory inhibitory network, but we know excitatory inhibitory networks are complicated. All inhibitory networks are a lot easier. And we just want to illustrate what happens when you couple background connectivity to a Hopfield network. Okay. So now Jij is, as usual, 1 over n, the sum on mu of eta I mu, eta j mu. And these things, again, are plus or minus 1 with probability 1/2. I said here? Yes. Okay. So same story, but a little more complicated. Now I have to tell you what Wij is. And Wij is going to have kind of a weird form. Wij equals 1 over n. So we have n units. Plus delta Wij. And this is 0 mean divided by n. 0 mean unit, let's say unit variance. Independent and it's probably spelled wrong. A random variable. Okay. So what do we have? We have the sum on j of Wij nu j is 2 terms. It's 1 over n, the sum on j of nu j, plus 1 over root n. This would be the square root. The sum on j of delta Wij nu j. Okay, the first term is actually just equal to nu bar. This is the average firing rate by definition. And what about this term? Okay, these are random, so we square it. So the average value of this term squared is equal to 1 over n, the sum on j of delta Wij squared times nu j squared. Okay, and this thing is equal to 1 on average, right? This is unit variance. So this thing is actually equal to 1 over n, the sum on j of nu j squared equals the second moment squared. Okay, so what this means is the square of this term, so we can just replace this by average value of nu squared times squiggle I. Unit mean 0 mean unit variance, 0 mean unit variance random variable. Okay, so our equation becomes nu I equals phi minus nu bar plus new squared bar. Actually, let's use more consistent notation. New squared bar. Squiggle I. And then plus 1 over n. Sum on things we've seen before, the same thing we had before. Eta I mu, m mu. Okay. Where as usual, m mu is equal to 1 over n, the sum on j, eta j mu, nu j. And there is no 1 over n. Okay. So we're going to focus on, we're going to say that mu equals nu, m nu large. So actually, we'll just say, so m nu is large, and m nu not equal to nu is small. As before, it's on the order of 1 over n. When we do that, we get nu I. This is the exact same calculation we just did, minus nu bar plus nu squared, squiggle I. And then we have plus eta I nu, m nu. And then we have plus root p minus 1 over n times another random variable, squiggle I, I'll call it squiggle ij. Okay? So we have two random variables. And what did we just learn? What's the effect of these random variables? Okay? So we have a random variable there and a random variable there. All they do is smear out the gain functions. Actually, well, let's be a little more explicit here before we do that. So we can write down expressions for nu bar. So nu bar is equal to 1 over n. One over n, the sum on I of phi of minus nu bar plus nu squared, squiggle I, plus eta I nu, m nu, plus square root of p minus 1 over n, squiggle I, j, and the random variable. And we have m nu equals 1 over n, the sum on I of eta I nu, phi of same thing, minus nu bar plus nu squared, squiggle I, plus eta I nu, m nu, plus the square root of p minus 1 over n, squiggle I, j. Okay. So now we have a sum. We have two sums, sum over I, sum over I. Okay. And what did we learn from last time? All these sums over I do is smear out the gain function. That's all. Nothing else. So what this is super, super powerful, because basically it means we could ignore this, ignore this, ignore this, ignore this, and all we do is change the gain function. So if the gain function was sort of steep, it becomes what happened? Oh. Oops. Sorry. There we go. All that happens, it becomes, oops, what's going on? Okay. Don't seem to be able to erase these purple things, but you get the idea. So actually I'll include them. So all these things go away, and all that happens is that the gain function becomes smeared out. it becomes smoothed by the noise terms. So what that means is these equations get replaced by nu bar equals 1 over n, the sum on I of phi tilde of minus nu bar plus eta I nu m nu, and m nu equals 1 over n, the sum on I of phi tilde. There's an, oops. Of eta I mu phi tilde minus nu bar plus eta I nu m nu. Okay, and these phi tilde. So if go to the next page, if the gain functions originally so this is nu, this is phi of nu. So phi of nu look like this. Then all that happens is that phi tilde of nu is a smeared out version of this one. So this is phi tilde. Okay, we just smeared it out. That's all we did. And it's super nice because now it's basically all this complicated stuff with a noisy random synaptic weight, extra memories, just smear out the gain function. Now, if we want a quantitative analysis, we have to figure out how much it's smeared out. But we know if we smear it out too much, everything's going to fall apart. And now we can actually write down, we can do these averages, okay? So remember this term here, this is plus or minus 1, the probability of half. So when we do these averages with probability 1/2, so we can actually, I'll just write it down. It's probably easier to write it down than say it. So nu bar is equal to 1/2. So if phi tilde of minus nu plus m nu plus phi tilde of minus nu plus m nu. And m nu equals 1/2. If eta nu is positive, phi tilde of minus nu plus m nu minus phi tilde of minus nu minus m nu. Okay. And we're going to plot the right-hand side, the bottom one. That's the most important. So on this axis, we're going to put 1/2 phi tilde of minus nu plus m nu minus phi tilde of minus nu minus m nu. Okay. And we notice when m nu equals 0, this is just 0, and it's some kind of, so this is some kind of sigmoidal curve. We don't know what it looks like. Maybe something like this. Okay. So this is a plot, and now we can look for intersections with a 45-degree line, and oops. Intersection with the 45-degree line might be something like this, and now we see we can embed memories. Okay. And then so this is 2 equations, 2 unknowns. We have to solve self-consistently for the mean as well, but you get the idea. The idea is we can take a standard network, in this case was all inhibitory, couple that to some memory-like connectivity structure, and we can actually get a memory. We can also get m nu equals 0 is also a solution, right? Which is kind of nice. We don't have to invoke the memory, but we can. And that's actually important. It's something the Hopfield model doesn't have. In the Hopfield model, you're all within one of the memories. In this model, you can have no memories at all, which is important because we don't want to always have a memory in our brain. Sometimes we want to not be thinking about it. Okay, so I'm going to actually try to summarize a huge amount of material on the next slide. Then we'll take a break and we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about higher dimensional attractors. So I'm not even sure it's possible we've done so much. So our starting points. So in some question. I can't see. Let me see. I can't see the Zoom. So if anybody, somebody have a question? Let me actually go back to the Zoom and see. Let's go back to Zoom and see. There's some chats. Chat. Okay, no worries. Okay, you can still, I believe, see my screen. Okay, tell me if you can't see my screen. I believe you can. Okay. So let's try for a grand summary. So first of all, what are we trying to do? Trying to do something that's very hard. We have a network. Network is filled with neurons. So there are lots of neurons in this network, some excitatory, some inhibitory. But I'll just make them all one color. They're connected with some connectivity matrix, Wij. In principle, they receive input from other neurons. So there's input, and there's some kind of output. Oops. Okay, an output. We didn't really consider any input and output, but we could have if you wanted to. Okay. So our goal, so the thing we would really like to do is compute somehow, or determine, compute firing rate of every neuron in a network as a function of input. Well, input, but really, and this is the important one, synaptic strength. So this is sort of every theorist's dream. You give me the weight matrix of synaptic strength. You give me the Wij, these quantities, and I'll tell you everything about the firing rate of every neuron in the network. Now, that is really hard. Nobody's been able to do that. And so we made lots of approximations. So basically, we made approximations. So the first approximation we made, we considered randomly connecting them. Okay. So randomly connected networks turned out to be kind of easy in a way, because in that case, we can write Wij, or the sum on J of Wij. Well, actually, let's actually, before we do that, let's go back here. And we started with a fundamental set of equations. So our starting point in all of this was equations tau dv I dt equals minus vi minus e leak plus the sum on J. We didn't quite start with this, but we quickly got to this, Gj of t. And Gj of t is just nu j, the average firing rate, plus temporal fluctuations. Okay. So remember what GG actually looks like as a function of time. If these are the spike times, this is T on this axis. Basically, whenever neuron J fired, you get a little blip of activity. If we average that blip, we just get the firing rate because we chose new J appropriately. And then there's temporal fluctuations. All these other things are temporal fluctuations. Okay. So this is sort of what we did. Random connectivity is nice because we can write new J. This is sort of our starting point. Oops. The sum on J of Wij new J equal to sum on J of W bar new J plus the sum on J of delta W Ij new J. As a very, very first pass. So the first pass, we basically ignored this term. And what we got is basically W bar times N, the number of neurons, or maybe the number of connections per neuron, times the average firing. Okay. So we took this model here, replaced the right-hand side by the average firing rate, which seems like an insanely harsh approximation, but even that was complicated. Okay. That gave us the Wilson and Cowan equations. Oops. So we ended up with Wilson-Cowan equations. Which had a kind of complicated Low-Klein structure. So if this is nu E and this is nu I, we remember the dynamics. Hopefully this should look familiar. We had null-Kleins that look like this. Okay. Oops. This is I null-Klein. And this is E null-Klein. Okay. And that basically, I mean, the arguments were non-trivial, but kind of in the end, this kind of made sense. Okay. So that was sort of, and it turns out, and what was really important, so the most important observation is, so this is the most important observation, which I mentioned earlier, fluctuations, so noise, fluctuations, and by fluctuations, I mean the sum on J of delta W Ij, Uj, don't have much effect. They just smooth out. And that is really useful fact. Because that means we can mainly ignore them. If we want to know how much they smooth out the gain functions, we have to do complicated calculations, but we often don't care about that. Okay. So then the other connectivity structure we considered too was Hopfield connectivity. Which was Jij equals 1 over n, the sum on mu of squiggle I mu, squiggle J mu, where these things are plus or minus 1. And remember, because of this fact, because it just smoothed out the gain functions, we did have to take into account noise to get sort of an effect, but for much of our analysis, we could just replace this by 1 over n squiggle I nu Oops. Squiggle I knew. Oh, you guys let me write squiggle again. So this is eta. Squiggle is reserved for noise. Eta I knew. Eta J knew. So we can consider one memory at a time, which is basically what we did. And then the rest of these things just smeared out the gain. Okay. So that's kind of nice. And really our picture here, if this is plus or minus one, if you have a network of neurons, so this is where eta I knew equals plus one and eta I knew equals minus one. So the connectivity here is plus, here it's plus, and across it's minus, across it's minus. Okay. And that what that did is allow these neurons, all these neurons have SI equals plus one, and all these neurons have SI equals minus one. And something I didn't talk about is what this does is now if external input, we can now think about external input relatively easily. So if you have a bunch of neurons coming into this via external input with various firing rates, if the neurons coming into here, if these neurons all have plus firing rate, and this is actually, let's say, if these neurons are coming into here, have high rate, firing rate, and these have low rate, in that case, you'll activate a memory, okay? So the connectivity allows the memory to form, but even if you make it so weak that memories can't form, input, which basically just activates all these neurons positively and all these neurons say negatively or by a small amount, is going to have a big effect on the dynamics, okay? On the other hand, if the input was random relative to the connectivity, not much is going to happen. So we can think of these Hopfield networks in two ways. One is they're memory networks, and the other is they're picking out a preferred subpopulations, and when the input activates those subpopulations, you get a big effect. Okay, and we're going to see actually the second one in a little more detail shortly. Okay, so there's been a lot of material. If you absorbed half of it, I'll be pretty happy. There are notes which give you a lot more detail, possibly too much. And of course, there are lectures. So let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. We'll switch gears and talk about other kind of attractors. Okay, so let's continue. So far, what have we looked at? So basically, Hopfield networks. So why do we care about so Hopfield networks? So these were nice because they were associative memory networks. Okay. So if you have if this is activity space, in this case, it was sort of S space, which is very high dimensional. And what they had is they had lots of fixed points. Okay. If you started near a fixed point, you'd end up in the fixed point. And we could store, these are memories with a large number of fixed points. Of course, with realistic noise, maybe not so large, but in principle, we're looking for something like this. Okay, so this is nice because it allows us to remember things. So the question we can ask is, are there higher dimensional analogs? Versions of fixed point and the next high thing you might consider, instead of points, we could have lines. So again, we have activity space. This is activity space. Maybe we won't use S anymore because they were binary. And instead of having points, what would be sort of nice to have would be line attractors. Okay. So if you start here, you go on the line. Once you're on the line, you stay there. And the reason to have line attractors rather than point attractors can tell you about some single thing. All right. But it can't tell you anything else about the thing. So you remember your dog, but there's nothing, it just basically gives you a dog. What you would want is just sort of characteristics of that dog. So in the case of a line attractor, there might be something one-dimensional. We'll give examples in a second. But now, where you are on the line attractor, so where you are on the line attractor, gives additional information. And it's analog information. Okay. So if there was some 1D feature that you want to remember, line attractors are perfect, right? Maybe this could be, so what's one-dimensional? Well, angle is say, let's say you're trying to remember this is kind of an abstract example, but you're trying to remember this a bar, and this angle is theta. Okay. So the fact that this line attractor is activated tells you you're thinking of a bar, and where you're on the active bar might tell you what the angle. So this is theta, equals 45 degrees, and over here is theta equals 130 degrees. Okay. So where on the bar now gives you information that you can't get with a single point attractor. Okay. And so what we want to do is build. So our goal for this lecture, so our goal write down connectivity that gives us a line attractor and we're going to, that's maybe, and then we're going to analyze it. We're going to analyze it a little bit. So we kind of want to get some deep understanding of what goes on a little bit. And in particular, we're going to ask, can we have multiple line attractors? Or can we have multiple lines, or multiple attracting lines? Okay. So instead of having, you know, a single line, we might want to have, okay, there's one line, and then another line is, we have another line somewhere else. I'll just draw it over here. Okay. So if you go close to this one, we're attracted to this line attracting. And that would be nice because we want to remember more than one thing. Maybe, you know, two different lines, or this could be the color of something, which is an analog variable. You can have higher dimensional versions of these things, plane attractors and so on. And we can even ask, which is something we'll get to later, is can we have plane attractors? And a plane attractor looks something like this. So now instead of being attracted to a line, you're attracted to some surface. Okay, so you pull down toward this, or up toward it. But once you get on this line, you don't move. And this is actually nice. It now stores two variables, so you can put color on this, right? Color is RGB, can reduce to 2 dimensions. And so you can say, okay, I'm remembering an object, and where I am in the point attractor determines the color, and that can be interpreted by downstream neurons to look at that activity and say, oh, you're looking at, you know, a green frog or a red frog or a blue. Okay, so this if we could build these things, it would be super, super nice. And we'll talk about the fact that these are actually important characteristics for networks in the brain. And we're going to actually write down, although in these days, instead of writing down the models, we tend to learn. Okay, so what's a classic line attractor network? This goes back a long time. So we're going to use, I'm going to use R. I keep switching variables. This is just, I'm going to use R. Well, let's actually not switch so much. Let's use new. The firing rate of neuron I. So it's a usual model, phi of some nonlinearity. So this is usual sigmoidal type nonlinearity. So you sum on J of Wij nu J. And basically what we want to do is choose, so goal, choose Wij and phi so that okay, question, good. Okay. So that there is a continuum of fixed points. So this is our goal. And I'm just going to write down a WHJ fixed points. It basically means, so new I fixed points, and we'll call these things new I 0 of theta. So different thetas will get different new I zeros. We're going to write down explicitly what those are in a second. But I'm just going to write down a solution. So a solution and that's Wij equals W depends only on a difference I minus J. And turns out this isn't so obvious, but we're going to need it later. Wi minus J equals Wj minus I. See, there's symmetric matrices that depend only on a difference, and this difference is, so J equals 1 to n. This difference, of course, is mod n. Okay, because if, let's say, n equals 100, that what this means is I, 2, 3 equals I 3, 4. W2, 3 equals W3, 4, right? Because the difference 2 minus 3 equals 3 minus 4, but this also equals W 100, comma 1. Okay, so 100 minus 1 is 99, but mod n is the same thing as 2 minus 3. Taken appropriately. Okay, so why is this a solution? Well, why does this have a continuum of fixed points? Go to the next page. And let's say it has one fixed point. Assume one fixed point. Which is new I0 of some theta naught. Actually, I won't even write theta naught. Got one fixed point. New I0 equals phi, some nonlinearity of the sum on J of Wi minus J, new J0. Okay, so it's got one fixed point, but now let's look at another fixed point. So now let's look at new I plus K, comma 0 equals phi of the sum on J, Wi minus J, new J plus K, comma 0. So our one fixed point was new I0. Now we'll give another fixed point, new I plus K0. And we'll see why that's really different in a second. So now we make the change of variables. I equals I prime minus K. And J equals J prime minus K. Okay, and when we do that, we get new I prime, comma 0 is equal to phi of the sum on J prime of W I is I prime minus K minus J prime minus K times new J prime, comma 0. And this nice thing about this is just I prime minus J prime. So we have new I prime, comma 0 equals phi of the sum on J prime of W I prime minus J prime, new J prime, comma 0. So if this term here is a solution, these are just dummy variables. We can now let I prime go back to I. That's a solution. Okay. So because of this translation invariance here, basically translation invariant phi rates are also a solution. So how do we interpret this? So very often, so we're going to write on this axis, So this is index I. And on this axis, we're going to write new I 0. And these things are typically, in fact, for reasons that aren't particularly obvious, a hill of activity. Okay. So this is the activity of new I is a function of I. Okay. And now we can ask, what is new, let's say new I plus 2 comma 0 look like? That's just a shifted version of this. Okay. So basically, if you want to know the value of new I 0 here, new I plus 2 0 is basically the value of this term. Okay. It's the same as this one, right? Because it's value of 2 over. And this one here, this value of I is just this one, it's just this one. Okay. It's 2 over. And so what happens is, it keeps going down. And over here, this one here is the same as that one, and up here. And it just shifted over. Okay. So this term here, I'm going to actually draw lines through there. It's a little easier to see. So this is our new I 0. And this term here is our, this is new I plus 2 comma 0. So what we have is basically, what we really have, of course, this isn't obviously a continuum. You have, if basically you have n neurons, so we found n fixed points. So if we have n neurons, this is kind of important. So if we have one fixed point, we automatically have n points. Okay, that's kind of nice, right? With this sort of simple connectivity, where this matrix is the key observation is this is right here. So if you have this translation, this is called a translation invariant weight matrix. Okay. With this translation invariant matrix, it's kind of nice, right? If you have one solution, you automatically have n solutions. It turns out you can make that in a continuum if you want, but that's kind of a detail. Actually, it took me a long time to figure that out. But if n is large, the fact that you have a million different fixed points right close to each other, that might as well be a continuum. Okay, so the two questions we want to ask in the next, we won't finish this off. Maybe we can answer one of these. So question number 1. So can we have multiple line attractors? In one network? And two, how do we move along we force the dynamics to move along the line attractor. Okay, so I don't think we're going to get, so what I want to do just right now is tell you why this question is interesting. Why do we care? Okay. So the number one is obvious, right? It'd be great to have, be able to store lots of analog variables in our brain. Number two is less obvious. Why would we want to actually move along the line attractor? Aren't we just remembering things? So it turns out there's a classic line attractor in your head. So you have, so if you close your eyes, you know which direction your head is pointing. If you close your eyes and turn your head, you still know which direction your head is pointing. And you can stand in a dark room and move around and know to some extent which direction you're pointing. And so it turns out in your head, so you have a line attractor in your head. In your head. Well, to tell you the truth, I don't know if these have ever been found in humans, but they found in monkeys and mice, definitely in monkeys, mice, and rats. That tells you which way your head is pointing. Okay, and it looks very much like this. Okay, there are actually cells in your brain, or at least in rat brain, that have this characteristic. And the peak of the activity, so peak of the activity corresponds to direction. They found these in rats, they found them in flies, they found them in primates, I believe. And it's super, and so that's nice, right? And it's kind of nice to know which direction your head is pointing. Mainly you don't need it, right? You open your eyes and look around, but it's most useful in the dark, okay? In the dark, you don't have any cues. And as you turn your head or move your body around, what you need to do is move the line attractor. Okay, if you close your eyes and rotate 45 degrees, you better somewhere there has to be neurons in your brain that tell you you've rotated your body by 45 degrees, and that's the basically the job of these head direction cells. Okay, so these are called head direction cells. Okay, so they're observed in rats, flies, and I'm guessing primates, but to tell you the truth, I don't know off the top of my head. I'll put a question right there, but they kind of have to be there, right? Because all animals know to some extent where they are when they've moved around. And so they sort of only want to address this question, how do we force a dynamics to move along the line attractor? What we want to do is write down equations like this, tau d nu I dt equals phi of the sum on j of w I minus j nu j plus external input, some kind of external input, h I of t. We'll actually see later, it has to be more complicated than that. So we want choose external input. External input. Input. To move line, position of P. Okay. And the external input we have in mind, these are vestibular, they're so-called vestibular cues. Which is basically a neuroscience's way of saying acceleration. If you move your head, you feel some acceleration. It's a vestibular cue that allows you to update where your line of track is. Okay, so we'll do that next time. Next time we should be able to really finish off line attractors, and then we'll talk about other kind of sort of these. We're going to finish off these classic line attractors next week or on Wednesday, and then we'll talk about sort of more sophisticated line attractors as they might be implemented in the brain. Okay, let's stop now. A little bit early, but this is a good stopping point, and let me know. I'll be on for a while if you have any questions.
Any questions? Or any comment to our professor? Professor?
Yeah.
Is it possible to recommend some teaching notes in print for the students? Sometimes your handwriting is not so clear. In fact, yeah.
Yeah, so the summary of the course should have pretty much everything I've talked about so far. So on the webpage, there are tons of notes. If my handwriting gets bad, you should tell me to slow down. It's a matter of I go too fast. But yeah, there should be, the notes should have pretty much everything. I'll double check, but they should have pretty much everything I talked about, including some homework problems. I'm not sure they have, I gotta check and see if they have line attractors. But I do have some line attractor notes, which I'll add.
I think if there is a writing mistake made in the note.
Sorry, couldn't hear that. Say that again.
I think there is maybe a writing mistake on the note. A little mistake.
Where?
I don't know where it is. I just know the equation is the average mu equal to half of the sum of the.
Oh, that one. Okay, yeah. So that's. Let me go up to that one. I know what you're talking about. Was here, right?
Yes, the two function is the same. Maybe the second one is
oh, the second one should be a minus sign. Is that what you're referring to? Does this help?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Minus M nu. Was that the problem?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. So that's clear where that came from? It's basically from here, eta, this eta term could be either plus or minus 1, where the plus and minuses came from. Any other questions?
No, thank you, Professor.
And Changbin, I know I owe you an email. I'll get to it eventually.
Yes.
It's on my list. I haven't forgotten it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm waiting for your information.
Okay, yeah.
Bye.
Okay, bye everybody.